All right, take your Bibles this morning, turn to Ezekiel 16. Ezekiel 16, verses 44 through 50. Now, I had it sitting on my bed, and I left it. I was going to wear my baseball cap today that said Houston Astros. We made it to the big series, and so I got on the internet last night as soon as the final out to buy my ticket to the game. And I want to thank Cammie for wearing the orange and black in celebration of the Astros winning. But I got on the thing that I was going to go, I want to go to a World Series in Houston. That's my bucket list. You know what it costs to go to the World Series? To be in the nosebleed section, the highest seat away from the stadium, I'm not even certain it's in the stadium, was $1,200. To be on the third base or behind the first base dugout is $12,000 to $15,000. So I went ahead and ordered about 5 tickets. So if any of you want, no. So I'm going to have to watch it on TV. But my Astros finally made it. They've only done this once before, and it was the fall, and my mom died. My mom died suddenly, and I stayed with Dad during the 2 weeks while we were trying to get things back together after her death came so suddenly. And the Astros were playing the World Series then, but I don't really remember a whole lot about that one. So if you need me at nighttime starting another week, call the rest of the staff. That's all I'm going to tell you at this point. All right, I said I was going to do 3 weeks of sermons on our culture. And so last week I started with Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. And the basis of it simply was this: the people of God were being destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And my challenge to all of you was to take seriously your study of God's Word. You need to know what it says. It's very important that you know what God's Word says. So you know how to live and how to respond. You know, since I've started with baseball, last night there was a play at the end of the game where they hit this ball to the third baseman. It was a tough play, and he came in, short-hopped it. He had to get the guy out at the plate. It would have made the game go one way or the other. And he had one split second to get it right, and he had to do it to such precision. It was unbelievable, and he pulled it off. He pulled it off in a very dramatic way. Now, you could call it lucky, but it's because he had practiced. He knew what to do. He had already thought through all that was going to happen, and at the moment, he was able to react correctly. You and I need to have God's Word so ingrained in us so that we're not caught by the subtleties of the culture or of Satan himself that would lead us astray, and that when something happens, we know the right way, the godly way in which to respond, how to speak, and how to be what God's called us to be. Now, what I want to do today is I want to deal with the sins of Sodom. Now, this one, I did this about 8 years ago here. As I said, it got printed in the Express News afterwards. I then was asked to be a blogger and blogged for them for about 3 years. In fact, for the last 2 years, I was the number one blogger in San Antonio until I stood against the mayor of San Antonio on a social issue, and my name vanished off the Express News blog site. Never ever again to be allowed back on it and stuff. But that's the price sometimes of what you do. But I want to go back and address this one again because I've always found this fascinating. Now, I want to start with this. There's a writer I like to read every so often. Her name's Peggy Noonan. She writes for the Wall Street Journal. And a few years ago, she wrote a journal article called Goodbye Bland Affluence. And what she did was she told of a family in Michigan that were under financial pressures. Life was just crushing them. They'd made a lot of bad decisions. They had a lot of debt. And so they decided in just one day, they did this and changed their whole life. They gave up all their credit cards. They got rid of their satellite TV. They got rid of their high-tech toys, and they quit eating out. They moved to a 40-acre ranch, and on that 40-acre ranch, they decided to become more self-sufficient and just live a quiet, easy life. But the USA Today picked up the story and wrote it to make them look bad, as they were some kind of survivalists who were disappearing and not facing life. What the USA, even though they tried to make it political, what they did not expect was a reaction in the lines underneath the published article, where people started responding over and over, because the story hit a nerve in America a couple years ago. And the lively comment thread on the paper's website had hundreds of people writing in. They said stuff like, "They look happy to me. My husband and I are making the same decisions." Another said, "I don't know if this is so much survivalism as a return to common sense." Another said, "The more stuff you own, the harder you have to work to maintain it." Well, That's why the sins of Sodom attracts my attention. Because when we say the sins of Sodom, we go to the sexual sins immediately with our minds, but that's not what Ezekiel does, because that's not what the problem was. So you don't know this probably, but if you study Romans 1 over and over again, you're going to learn something. The sexual sins, when they begin to be pervasive, is God's judgment. When people fall in that, He's removed His hand, and that's the consequences of something else being wrong. And so what Ezekiel wanted to do was he wanted to bring this home to the people of Israel, because the people of Israel had hit a level of life that made Sodom look good. And he wanted them to see, so he's using this as an example. And what he's going to be telling them is, you guys are scared of the country of Assyria, you're scared of Babylon. That's not your problem. That is not even your danger. In fact, in the matter, I would say for America, we have fears of Iran and nuclear weapons, North Korea and nuclear weapons. We're worried about the Russians and the Chinese and all the stuff. You see that on the news all the time, over and over again, our dangers. But the dangers we face are not external as much as they are internal. And this one is fascinating. Now, you've heard me do this. I'll reference this all the time. But I want us to look again and think through in a fresh way what the sins of Sodom were. So stand with me. You follow in your Bible. I'll start in verse 44. Verse 49 will be our key verse this morning. And you follow along in your Bible. Behold, everyone who quotes Proverbs will quote this Proverbs concerning you, saying, like mother, like daughter. Now I get specific. You are the daughter of your mother, who loathed her husband and children. You're the sister of your sisters, who loathed their husbands and your children. Your mother was a Hittite, and your father was an Amorite. Now your older sister is Samaria, who lives north of you with her daughters. And your younger sister, who lives south of you, is Sodom with her daughters. Yet you've not merely walked in their ways, or done according to their abominations, but as if that was too little, and this is a key phrase for the nation, you've acted more corruptly in all your conduct than they ever did. Now, that's very important in this. Israel was worse than Sodom. Verse 48 says, as I live, declares the Lord, Sodom, your sister, and her daughter have not done as you and your daughters have done. Now, this is the guilt of your sister Sodom. This is what she did wrong, her and her daughters. They were arrogant, had abundant food, and careless ease. Didn't help the poor and the needy. Thus, they were haughty and committed to abomination before me. Therefore, I removed them when I saw it. Father, as we look at these three things today and begin to grasp the impact they might have on our own lives, speak to us. Help us to make decisions this day that will help us to walk in a manner pleasing to you, that we will be aware of dangers and potential falls that we can have in life if we're not aware of what's going on. For last week we learned that the lack of knowledge is what brings us down. So teach us, help us to understand, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated. I never forget the first time. I've read this 100 times, but it was several years ago I read this passage the first time, and it jumped out so dramatic at me. And so I'm going to do my best again to bring this to you. But the prophecy here was not so much to deal with Sodom, but to deal with the nation of Israel. So it's not an attack per se on Sodom. It is an explanation of what went wrong in Sodom and to show what's now going wrong in the nation of Israel. And in making that explanation, the prophet Ezekiel is explaining why Israel is falling so severely and why they're going to face one of the most difficult days they've ever imagined. In fact, the sins of Israel far exceeded the sins of Sodom. We read that a moment ago in verse 47. And the prophet is very pointed in his condemnation of Israel. When he says, you didn't merely walk in her ways. You didn't just commit the same abominations. You viewed that as really very little in comparison. It wasn't enough depravity for you. You took it to a whole new level in all that you did. In fact, he said you acted more corruptly in all your conduct, verse 47, than Sodom ever thought about. In fact, Sodom was pre-K in comparison to the nation of Israel during these days. And we know later that God brings judgment on Israel because of her sins, which were great. You know, the fall of Israel started a long time before all this happened. When you go into the northern part of Israel to Caesarea Philippi, it's a beautiful countryside with mountains and all the streams and everything. The Jordan River starts up in that area. And up there past the little town of Dan, which is still in existence after 5,000 years. It's still there, the one that Abraham walked through. You come to this place where they worshiped. Jeroboam set up the worship. And it was at that point where they set up the altars at that point to be able to worship the golden calf that he had made for them, that the nation began their drift. And the drift was a slow process over time. And that drift just occasionally more and more began to move away, so that Hosea one day wakes up in his situation and says, what I'm telling you is you guys have completely and totally forgotten who God is. And because of that, your life now gives demonstration that your knowledge is very weak or it is non-existence. So what started out as a good political move for the nation of Israel has now led to the nation being in an unbelievable, difficult situation. And so when Ezekiel is speaking, he is warning them of what is about to happen to them and why it is there. Now, if I was a Jew living in Israel during this time, what would have been my attitude towards the place of Sodom? Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the Dead Sea. It gets its name, and it deserves its name, because everything around it is dead. If you go into the Dead Sea, you cannot sink. Fact of the matter is, if you've ever been to the Great Salt Lakes, it is about twice as salty as the Great Salt Lakes. And you know, in the Great Salt Lakes, you can float on top of the water. You can almost walk on water on the Dead Sea. Not quite, but you can. If you splash the water into your eyes, it will make you go blind if you do not get that water out, that salt out as fast as possible. It will burn like you can't even begin to imagine. And if you swallow the water, you go for medical help immediately because the salt content is so bad. Well, that whole area around there is dead. There are no plants along the shorelines. In fact, the only green you'll see is ever so often when you'll see a stream coming from the mountain. It's a little oasis ever so often. It's where David would go when he was running from Saul. See, this is the most desolate land, but En-Gedi was the one place where there was trees and waters, and that's where Saul and David had their encounter one time, and David cut off part of Saul's robe. But the rest of that is just dead. In fact, there was little reason for the Jews to ever go down there, because the reputation of the area was unbelievable, because that's where Sodom and Gomorrah were. It's totally dead. If you go to the southern part of the Dead Sea, there's nothing there. Centuries ago, it's been gone, and nothing has ever come back from there. And so for the people, they'd have thought, well, those were bad people. They lived horrible lives. They got exactly what they deserved. And so their attitude would have been one of unbelievable arrogance towards them. See, this took place, Sodom did, during the days of their spiritual father Abraham. And they had the law written to them that said all of its land is brimstone, it's salt, it's burning waste, it's unsown, it's unproductive, no grass grows in it. That's still that way this day. That should have been a warning to them to be careful in life. But too often we ignore the judgments of God and think that's what happened to others because they lived such bad lives. They messed up so badly and they were living these horrible existence, and so they got exactly what they deserved. That's why when I get to this verse, it catches me. Because what was wrong with Sodom? Well, you'll go because they were guilty of homosexuality and lesbianism and sexual immorality and all that kind of stuff. That's where we get our word sodomites and everything else, even to this day. But he does not address that here. Look at verse 49 and let's see what he looks at. What were the sins of Sodom? Arrogance. Too much food. Too easy of a life. That's not what we normally think of. That's why the editor of the Express News happened to be here that day and asked me to publish this, because it caught him so off guard what I ended up doing. Because I didn't go to the sexual part of the whole thing. Because what happened is there's something goes wrong beforehand. And when that gets to a certain point, then you fall into other things. But what was wrong was something wrong in their heart. So arrogance, too much to eat, gluttony, and laziness. Now let's think through these things, because we battle this in our culture right now. That's why this strikes me, guys. Oh, you know, because of me having to do a couple of times nationally and speak on some issues. But the thing, you know, people think I automatically going to go towards some kind of attack. No, I'm more worried about these things, because this is what leads to everything else going wrong. Do you know how impacted and influenced we are by culture? We're so blind sometimes to what the cultural impacts are on us. In fact, if we were to sit and try to figure something out, we'd probably all have trouble seeing it. This has nothing to do with the sermon, but I'm reading a book about Calvin and Servetus. Servetus was the one who was killed because of his being a heretic, and Calvin was a preacher in Geneva at the time. And as that unfolded, he was brought in to testify against Servetus, and he did. And eventually it led to Servetus being killed by the government of Geneva. But Calvin, ever since then, the great theologian, has been known as a very bad man because he was a part of all that took place that led to the death of this man. But the problem was the culture of the day. And that's what I see in our interpreting history even now. We forget what the culture was like. Did you know that every person who disagreed with anybody in government during the day of Calvin was executed? It didn't matter what it was you did, you were killed. That was just life during those days. And so whenever we begin to look at things going on, we got to remember there's certain parameters that are already impacting people's lives. They don't even see what's wrong. We look at what happened with the killing of Servetus as something bad today, but in that day it wasn't. I think you and I are so impacted by what goes on in America right now that it has pervaded most of what goes on, and we miss all the danger signs. And so what are they? Arrogance. The arrogance of our culture just keeps growing. We're better than everybody else. I can handle life. I can get away with it. You might not, but I can get away with whatever I am doing. I am better than everyone over here. It's this quiet pervasiveness that goes through. My kids are better than your kids. My kids deserve all of these kind of things. Your kids are all messed up. I've got the best job in the world. My place here is the best. Everything is competition. Everything is about who is at the top of the game and everything that goes on. We buy the books of the ones who are the most famous so we can follow in their shoes, and we rejoice over those kind of things. But there's just this quiet arrogance that goes underneath. And you know what arrogance really is? What is the opposite of arrogance? Give me a word that is opposite of arrogance. Say it again. Humility. Humility. What is humility? Big word, hard to define? Not really. What is humility? I consider you more important than me. Where do I get the definition? Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 11. Well, we are told to have this attitude in yourself, which was also in Christ Jesus our Lord, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself of all of that, became a bondservant, was found in appearance and in likeness of a man. And he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, death on a cross. And because of that, God has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above all names. A moment ago, we came to the Lord's Supper table. This is the most perfect example of humility we could have ever asked for. You guys were more important than his own life. He died, he shed his blood, he suffered greatly so that you might have life. And we're to have the same attitude. Philippians 2:3 then says at the start of that, consider other people more important than yourself. When a nation or a people, God's people, begin to go down, it's because we're too wrapped up in our own lives and don't notice what's going on with those around us. And we do not have time to be of help to anyone else. Ever heard the Good Samaritan story? What did the religious guys do? Well, I've stood on a mountain and looked down on the Samaritan road. It is desolate beyond anything. Between Jericho and Jerusalem, it is unbelievable. That's where the shadow of death takes place in Psalms 23, when the sun sets in the evening. It gets dark very quickly in the canyons where that road runs. So I can see anybody passing through there suddenly want to get through it as quick as can, because it's a long distance of a walk, 10 to 15-mile walk to get through there. And so the two religious leaders had schedules. They looked on their iPhone and saw they had appointments coming up. And so they passed this guy who has been beaten and left on the side of the road. Listen, I'll say a prayer for you and go on their way. But the Samaritan guy came by, and what did he do? He took care of him. He had to have money. He had to be a businessman. Why? Because he paid all the bills for this guy. He put him up. He took care of him. He provided everything that needed to be going on. But he found time. See, when we start going wrong is I just got too much stuff going on. I ain't got time. I got my kids, I got my family, I ain't got time. That doesn't sound arrogant, but when I don't care about others, it's arrogant. And the fall of Sodom and the fall of Israel was caused by that lack of concern for other people around them. But let's add a second thing to it. Abundant food. Does anybody remember why Lot moved to Sodom? You remember why he moved there? His cattle and his stuff were getting big, and his servants were having trouble finding things. Abraham's cattle and everything was getting bigger and bigger, and they were clashing over land just to graze their cattle, which is very important when you have cattle. And so they had so many cattle, and so they needed to find new ways. Abraham, being the man that he was, said, Lot, you pick wherever you want to go, and I'll go opposite direction. He left the decision to him. And so Lot looks around, and what does he see? He saw the valley of the Jordan, well watered everywhere. This was before Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. It was like the Garden of Eden. It was gorgeous. It was unbelievably beautiful. Garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt when you go to Zoar, to the most beautiful place you could ever ask for. And so that's where he took off. In Sodom was abundance beyond imagination. Isaiah later will say of the people that he's speaking to, there was gaiety among the people, gladness, the killing of cattle, the slaughtering of sheep, the eating of meals, the drinking of wine. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we may die. Isaiah is the one who made that particular statement. See, the abundance of food was a huge problem. You know what's scary to me about that? What's it like in America right now? Abundance of food. I don't even think about it. I go to H-E-B and I walk through a supermarket, superstore, and never even think about all there. I got 17,000 choices of food to be able to eat and to pick up. Spur of the moment, I can get anywhere. I can drive and stop every mile along the way and get me a taco and a tea and a hamburger and this. It doesn't matter where we go. It's just an abundance of food. I never forget my first couple of trips to Cuba. We'd be driving along. Alejandro, he went to be with a couple visiting with us today, so he's not in here. But Alejandro and I were in the van together, and he says, you think you can stop somewhere and get us a taco? And I said, I don't know, but we got to looking around. There's no place to get a taco in Cuba. That'll never happen. But there are no restaurants in Cuba. They are in the tourist areas, but there are no fast foods. There was nothing. We got to looking around. There was nowhere to stop and eat. Nowhere. We went grocery shopping. You want a treat? Go grocery shopping in Cuba. You have never had an experience till you grocery shop in Cuba. You know how you do that? You go down, and in a room that's about the size of just right here, there will be a lady there, and she has all these things stockpiled in there in this little room, and you give her your coupon book, and she gives you 5 eggs for the month. She gives you 6 ounces of beef for the month. She gives you about this much of rice for the month. You got to live on all of this stuff. And then you got to do what? You have to go to the vegetable market, and you walk through a vegetable market, and it is a zoo beyond imagination, and everything's dirty and filthy and flies and everything else, and that's where you get your fruit and your produce. We finally went to the grocery store. The grocery stores look like Trader Joe as far as size. 4 aisles. 1 product on each aisle, and you can't afford it. So when I go to worship in the Cuban church, they say when we pray the Lord's Prayer, we mean it. You guys don't. Give us this day our daily bread. But they don't deal with the abundance of food. In fact, they may be starving right now because the hurricanes have wiped out everything they do have. But here in America, we don't have that problem. We can just eat and eat and eat. We can go get us a half gallon of Blue Bell and have it while we watch the Astros win their game. We can turn on our favorite football team and eat a whole box of Oreos while we're doing all of that. Gluttony is a dangerous thing. You say, well, what do we do with all of this? Well, I'm warning you, it's just a danger out there. It's an unbelievable danger. And it destroys our health. It destroys everything about us, just as it did the people of God during this time. There was abundance everywhere. Being a Baptist all of my life, we were always quick to point out drinking alcohol. You want to get somebody up in arms, we Baptists, we get up in arms over alcohol. But don't preach about our fried chicken. Don't preach which eating, gluttony is what's condemned, not the drunkenness. It was the gluttony that was being condemned. In fact, the eating here has the word satiated. They were fighting with the food, filled up with more than they could ever eat, stuffed. They were eating till they were miserable. Here's the danger of all this. Philippians 3:19 says that our God is our, anybody know? Our appetite, belly, but appetite. One of the great dangers we face is we don't have that much concern for those around us, and we have too much to eat. But then let's add a third thing to it. Careless ease. Don't like this one. This is me sitting in my lazy boy chair, watching my big screen TV, eating Bluebell ice cream and Oreo cookies, and not a care in the world about anything. Ezekiel can't be talking to me. He's talking about everybody else at this point. But a careless ease, a quiet laziness that settles in life. Jan and I got invited on Friday night to an auction of paint, selling a painter, paint. I don't want to say this. I don't even know how to say it. This lady painted about 200, 150 paintings, big ones, landscape, all kinds of stuff. Her name's Soon East. I've known Soon. She's a filmmaker here in town. And she heard what was going on in Haiti, where the people are starving to death. And she wanted to do something. She's very wealthy, but she wanted to do more than just give money. So on July 4th, she started painting. And she sold all of her paintings on Friday night to anyone who'd buy, and all the money's going to Haiti. She's going to give a ton of money on top of it. But I was sitting there looking around the room when they were telling them what Son had done. I said, she painted every one of these since July the 4th. I mean, we're in a hotel with a huge room, and it's all filled up. So I went over to her daughter and said, your mom did this since July the 4th? She said she did this. She was so committed to helping people that she poured her heart and soul into it. Instead of sitting back in her chair, being lazy in the evening time, she sat and spent all her time painting and getting things ready. I don't know about you, but it's easier to just sit quiet and rest, not to get involved. So my challenge to us simply is this. I read these things, but how does this fit us? A quiet arrogance where I really don't have enough time for anybody else. I'm too busy taking care of my own life. I got plenty to eat, so I don't have anything to worry about. I got my lazy boy chair, and I can enjoy my life. I mean, I've got the good life in America. I can't ask for anything better than the good life that I've got. But the danger in all of this is I'm thinking through it. My time's gone, and I got another 30 minutes probably of stuff we could talk about. But the danger is this. This is not living. It is not living. I'm not so certain that we've gotten the point in life that we think that this is what it's about, why we get successful. So we have all of this abundance and everything around. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong. There's nothing I can do anyway about how much food we have in America. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a nice house and some things within it. I'm not preaching against that, but I'm preaching against the subtle dangers where that leads us to a boredness of life, a mixed up about life. In fact, this is what leads to the sexual dysfunction of Sodom. Because this kind of life is not satisfying. This kind of life of abundance and ease in the long run does not work. So in the moments I have, what are we supposed to do with all of this? Because I see our nation imploding from the inside. We're not in the scriptures. We have nothing to say what happens to America, not happens to America. God's got all that in his timing and planning. But I love the country in which I live in. And so when I look at this stuff, I'm wanting to know, what do we do? I can't change what goes on out there. I was talking with James Robinson the other day. It's been a couple months ago. He visits with Trump all the time. And I said, can't you get Trump to be quiet? He said, no. So I can't do that. I tell him to quit tweeting so much, and he won't do it. He's too set in his ways, all that kind of stuff. Well, I can't affect what goes on out there, but I can challenge us in here as we gather on Sunday morning. So here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. Get involved in as many people's lives as you can in a good way. Serve. Jesus said, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. That's what humility is. Serve your family. Serve your neighbors. Just get involved in life. Don't just sit in your chair when you get home. Look for ways to be involved in life. Second, when it comes to food, discipline. Quit letting your appetites control you. Deal with the issues that cause you to sit there and overeat. Face up to the things that are going on in life. Build discipline. We need that. I mean, I need that. I'm speaking to myself here. You know, Jan put me on a diet here about 3 months ago, and I'm down 21 as the other day, and I'm going for about 20 more. And it's amazing, the energy level. My knees don't bother me anymore. In fact, I've always, the last couple Sundays, I wanted to just jump off here and surprise you guys, because I think I could jump off here and it wouldn't hurt. I'm not going to do it. I heard that. But what I have, you're challenging me now. But what was I preaching on? The whole thing just went out the window. But I'm amazed at what discipline does for us in a good way. And don't just think life is about getting it easy. Get involved. Pay the price. When you show love to people, it hurts sometimes. People will disappoint you. People will hurt you. How many times have I seen people in church take a place of service in a church setting, and then somebody go by, you're not any good at this. I can't believe they asked you. Are you that stupid? Then you come to me and say, I'm not ever doing that again. I'm not going to take this. And I'm wondering, you're throwing away a privilege to serve others, to find the meaning of life because one person doesn't like you. Did you know I would have had to quit after one day as pastor? That's life. But a lot of times we don't get involved because somebody will hurt me, somebody's going to hurt my feelings, somebody's going to say something. No. Because if you go to the sins of Sodom, you are walking slowly away from your Lord. Let's close with this. In Hebrews 12, it said, consider him who endured such hostility against himself. Think about him, Jesus, who endured such hostility against himself. They hated him. The world has always hated the things of Christ. Did you know when Lot came out, and he did a horrible thing that he did when he offered his daughters. That's a part of Lot. I don't understand why he did that. But if you also got to know, it's a cultural thing, too, of why he did that during those days. But whenever he said to the men who came to take those two men that he was watching over, bring them out to us, he said, don't do this evil thing. Do you know what they said to Lot? You're an alien. You moved here from somewhere else, and you're here judging us. See, they hated Lot because he said what they were doing was an evil thing. The world has never liked what we're about and never will. You're not going to win them over. But what I can do is I can be what God's called me to be. I can keep my eyes fixed on Jesus, consider the hostility he endured, and then I will not quit in life. And so in not quitting, I'm going to serve. And in not quitting, I'm going to be disciplined. And in not quitting, I'm not going to look for the easy way out. But I'm going to do what he's called me to do, walk with him this day and be what he wants so that he is glorified through it all. It is during the hard times that we see God in all of his glory. It's in the hard and difficult disciplines of life that we see him faithful to his word. And when you walk a life that is concerned about others with discipline and paying the hardships, then you find out something. You find out how to live. And you find the joy that comes. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing the testing of your faith produces endurance, so that you might be perfect and complete and lacking in nothing. That's where joy comes from. I close with a simple thought. They hit this ball last night in the ninth inning, the last batter, hit it to deep center. And the center fielder just stood there. He was really foolish, but he just stood there like this. And he just kind of one hand caught. I guarantee if it had been me, I'd have been there with both hands holding on to it because the world championship was about to unfold. But he just did that. Do you know what the Astros did when the center fielder caught the ball? Well, we won. Let's go home. They went crazy because they had fought hard and got a victory. He fought for us. He won the victory. May joy overflow us and may we live. May we never be guilty of the sins of Sodom, but may we be seen walking in His way, accomplishing His purposes and bringing Him glory. Father, we thank You for the day and for the privilege and honor You give us to be a part of Your kingdom. Today, in looking at the sins of Sodom, we're warned it's not the sexual things, although that's what brought the final downfall, but it was the subtle things that led them astray. It's the same subtle things that we face in our own lives this day. Hard to lock them down exactly where they impact us in our lives, but they're real and they're there and they're dangerous. The arrogance, the gluttony, the ease of life. So, Father, help us to be aware. Open our eyes to be able to see. Help us to walk in a manner that will be pleasing to You. It is my prayer this day in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to sing a song. It's a time of invitation. If you've never said, I want to follow Jesus Christ, I want to give you that opportunity this morning to be a follower of Christ. Come talk with me. If you're looking for a church home, this time we receive new members. But let's stand. The band will lead us. We sing and you come. If God directs, you come.
Savior, like a shepherd, lead us. Much we need Thy tender care. In Thy pleasant pastures feed us. For Thy use Thy folds prepare. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, Thou hast bought us, Thine we are. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, Thou hast bought us, Thine we are.
Next Sunday we'll conclude this series, but there are 22 different people that Jesus or the Father or the Spirit of God will say to them, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Over, and you'll be shocked how many I'll put. I'll put them all. I'm going to try to put them all on the screen because it's one after the other, after the other, after the other. And then we're going to talk about what it is, not to be afraid of what's going on around us, but how we bring Him glory. We're selling tickets to that movie. You can get those out afterwards from Penny. Should be out there. And Wednesday night in here, Dr. David Woods. We're very privileged to have him. I encourage you to come, be a part of it. It should be a special night. Lead us in our benediction. I'm way